Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good day, good moment to you, wherever and whenever you are on this sweet, wild, sacred earth. I invite you to drop into this moment, this now here, because if you are not here, perhaps you're nowhere. And I invite you to this moment. From somewhere on this sweet, wild, sacred earth, I'm Julie Ling, and this is the voice of wonder. I woke up at 2:30 in the morning and couldn't get back to sleep. And in my not sleeping after listening to 4 meditations and not falling asleep and not feeling very meditative, I wound up watching videos on YouTube, and I watched some of the videos about what's been going on here with the protests on campus. I was 8 when Kent State happened. And I've often thought since then that I was too young to understand what was going on. And now I'm 62, and I wonder if I'm too old to understand what's going on. And the thing that I noticed in the rhetoric in an article I looked at online and what I heard in the monologues on late night really struck me that it's very possible and very probable and very likely that a lot of what incited what happened was a rhetoric about the other. I don't know if you know, the word barbarian means, I love words, I let them have their way with me. The word barbarian, its root comes from he or she who speaks barbar. It literally means someone who speaks a different language, somebody who is different. But the connotations of the word are uncouth, idiotic, Neanderthal, ridiculous, other. We are not like them. They are barbarians. And when I first had the call to begin to write the piece I wrote and to do these meditations, my vision was for a world without other. And I've realized since then that even that is practicing what I don't want. If the metaphor is true that the universe is a fast food restaurant that doesn't hear other, an order of a world without other is great. Here you go. Another order of a world with other everywhere. And it took days for me to even be able to conceive of what the positive of that could or might be. And it sounds counterintuitive, but really, I believe it's a world where all parts are welcome. And that's not to say that we welcome murder or that we welcome violence. It's to say that we see with a kind eye the part that is so wounded that violence is its only recourse, the part that is so insecure and afraid that it cannot meet the part inside that would lash out and must say, no, I can't understand that. I'm not like that. That is other. During World War II, which they called the Great War and thought would be the last one, bless our hearts, there was a Christmas Eve, maybe it was Christmas Day, I don't remember now, where German soldiers and British soldiers were on opposite sides of no man's land. And because it was Christmas, there was a ceasefire. And they could hear each other singing Christmas carols. They could hear each other's humanity. And when the ceasefire ended, they didn't want to go back to fighting the others because they weren't other anymore. They were people who celebrated the same holy day, who valued the same things, who sang similar songs. And they almost couldn't do it because they recognized the shared humanity. And I've been on the verge of tears since I watched these things, and how prevalent it is and how easy it is, rather than seeing the parts of ourselves that we don't like, that we wish weren't there, or seeing our own wounds. And it's my experience that most of us have been taught, there's this dynamic of, oh, you hurt my feelings. You said that, you did this, you hurt me. How dare you hurt me? And more often than not, the thing that we said touched the other person's wound. And if you bump somebody with a broken arm, they're going to shriek. They're going to be upset because it touches the pain, the wound that's already there. And instead of acknowledging that, we've learned to say, well, shame on you. I didn't cause that. It's not my fault. Go away. And if we knew that now the arm is broken, we wouldn't take a mallet and hit them with it. We would be gentle. We might find them a doctor. We might see them with a kind eye, offer compassion, and see what we could do to help heal this thing, this hurt that was already there, that we unwittingly touched, instead of blaming them for their pain. Or accepting that we caused it in the first place, because we didn't. But we can't be kind about it until we know it's there. And my vision is for a world where we can meet that other inside ourselves, the part of us that does not yet know how to respond with kindness, and hold it, because there's always a part of us that's bigger. And when we can do that, then instead of thinking, what is wrong with this person? What kind of an idiot are they? Who would do this? Someone in pain. And stepping on a wound has never, in the history of life that I can imagine, helped to soothe or heal another's pain. I think there's another way. Let me say that again. Sonia Choquette, who teases about intuition, says, I try not to stay in my mind because I think of it as a bad neighborhood. I can't imagine anyone's heart would say, oh, you're in pain. Let me step on it. Oh, you're in pain. I may not be able to meet you in it right now, and I acknowledge that you're in pain. And so I'm going to step away and tend to myself so that perhaps I can meet you. Another thing that I have learned in my life, the last couple of years especially, is that when another person isn't able to give me the thing that I think they should, as a human being, as a friend, as a person of integrity, whatever the rubric, and I feel so hurt and so much suffering for that. Like, why would you do this to me? You're my friend. Why would you treat me to this way? I have learned that it is never because they won't. It is always because they can't. They don't know how, or they haven't learned how, or they don't even know it's an option. The ex of the cousin of my ex, I went to visit her because our kids were the closest things to cousins that either had. And she said to me as we were watching our children play, well, all Muslims are terrorists. And that's what I did inside. And it was one of those moments where I heard myself saying, really? Huh? What about Timothy McVeigh, who was a fundamentalist Christian and instigated the Oklahoma City bombings? If he was a Christian, does that make all Christians terrorists? And I said it without any judgment. And to my amazement, she looked at me and said, oh, I never thought of that. And then I watched and witnessed as she questioned her own racism that she had been taught. People who are different in this way are wrong and bad and stupid. People who are different in this way are wrong and bad and stupid. They're all barbarians. They're different. And I mean, I'll be 62 in a few days. And it's only the last couple of years that it occurred to me that people didn't behave the way I wanted, the way I thought they should, the way I wished, the way that seemed kind, the way that seemed obvious, the way that I would have behaved. Because they couldn't, not because they wouldn't. And it is sad when people drop bombs because they can't see any other alternatives. It is sad when people shoot bullets into a crowd because they don't see another way. And when we other those dropping the bombs or those shooting the rubber bullets, it's the same thing. It's an eye for an eye, making the whole world blind. So I offer you today the possibility, however uncomfortable it might be, even for a moment, to look with a kind eye at the things that you have turned away from your whole life, or you've been taught to turn away from. We have been taught so many things that haven't served us, like that we don't have a right to be ourselves. We don't have a right to any power. We don't have a right to love ourselves or be kind to ourselves or be full of ourselves. I ask you, who else are you supposed to be full of? Not in a puffed up way that hides fear, but in a way that owns the beauty of who you are so you can offer it to other people. Oscar Wilde said, be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. So please, be you. Let us see that. And please, find the kind eye that lives inside of you. Offer it first to yourself. Because that's how we remove that log in our own eye, and look out at the speck in somebody else's. We need to look with kindness with ourselves first. There's a really famous line, love your neighbor as yourself. But if we can't love ourselves, we can't love our neighbors. If we're constantly judging and berating and whapping ourselves down for anything inside that we've been taught and learned so well was wrong or bad or unsafe, how can we possibly see another? Sometimes I see it as if we look at ourselves in the mirror and there's this bit of dirt in our face and we think it's on the mirror. So we grab a rag and we rub it and we rub it and we rub it and we rub it, trying to get it off because we can't stand it. And finally, ultimately, we rub the silver nitrate off the mirror. And so we can't see the dirt. But if we move, there it is again, because it was on our face all along. But if we just take a washcloth and gently and kindly remove the dirt from our own face, it doesn't show up in the mirror out there anymore. And when we see dirt on somebody else's face that they're furious with the rest of the world about, we can go, oh yeah, I remember that. May you find that soft cloth. So I'm just going to play some flute and invite you to settle into your heart, to settle into this uncomfortableness and be present with it and see it with a kind eye. So today, I invite you to be gentle with yourself first, to be kind to yourself first, to grant yourself a little grace. And when you notice a knee-jerk reaction that is from a wound of yours, I invite you to not pick up your hobnail boots and stamp on it, which you were probably taught to do as a child and learned really well and have been practicing ever since and gotten really good at it. And the fact that you learned it so well shows us that you can learn other things just as well. They just might take a little practice and a little bit of time. Julia Cameron once said in her book, The Artist's Way, people say to me, oh, but do you know how long it will take if I start that now? Yes. How old I'll be, the same age you'll be as if you don't. So I invite you today, the moments when you think of it, when you notice yourself grabbing the whip to beat yourself, to set it down, to remember the line in the old spiritual, I'm going to lay down my sword and shield and study war no more. Because we can't stop the wars out there until we find peace in here. Stopping war doesn't really work. It's another way of pushing against. And when there's no resistance, often that other hand falls away. And it starts inside. It starts with you. It starts with me. And so today I invite you to that other line, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me, even a tiny bit. And I remind you that a shift of a single degree can change the trajectory of a lifetime. And I also remind you, there were studies done in Lebanon during one of its mini wars, where a group of people got together and meditated, not against war. They didn't say no bombing. They didn't say all these others. They said, we are meditating for peace. And when they did that, in a 5-mile radius, all bombing ceased. So I invite you today to take a few minutes, maybe after you watch this, and practice what you love. If you would love peace, make the picture inside of you as real as you can imagine, because your brain and mind can't tell the difference between what you imagine and what's real. It's all perceptions. So I invite you, when you think of it, to imagine what you would love, to place as many orders of that at the fast food restaurant of the universe as you possibly can. And even if it doesn't change things out there yet, it'll change you inside, and that will change your world. I know this because this is the 26th meditation, inspiration, invitation, exploration I've done, and it's changed me. May it change you. Today, may you go with grace. Grace before you, grace behind you, grace above you, grace you beneath you, grace upon your left and grace upon your right. May you walk in grace. In grace may you walk. In grace may you see. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Julie Ling, and today, no matter how quietly, may your heart sing.